Welcome into Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today, we are going to be breaking down a lot of Game 6's that are coming up, both in the NBA and in the NHL. We'll also go over the Game 5 victories that took place last night with the Mavericks handling the Clippers very, very easily in the Clippers home arena. We'll talk about that game in the first segment, along with the rest of the NBA action coming up tonight. Game 6 between the Bucks and Pacers, and Game 6 between the Knicks and 76ers. So we'll break all of that down in the first segment. In the second segment, we're going to talk a little bit about football. There's been a lot of news coming out of Pittsburgh today. Some interesting reports. Not sure how much you guys have heard about all of that. We'll break down every single big piece of news coming out of Pittsburgh in the second segment. In the third segment, we're going to do our 1 month power rankings for the MLB. So stick around for that. And in our fourth and final segment, we are going to be taking a look at the NHL, their Game 6's. There are 3 series yet to be decided. All of them are 3-2 in Game 6. There's one game tonight, but we're going to be breaking down all 3 Game 6's, see if the series is going to end. But anyway, before we get into the NBA, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message will pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. All you need to do is go to the link that's currently on screen. That is gsmcpodcast.net. We appreciate anything that you do give. We appreciate all of you for taking time out of your day and watching. And we appreciate all of you for leaving your comments and interacting with us. As always, if you do have anything to say, leave a donation, leave a comment. I always have my eyes on both of those places. But like I was saying, we're going to start off our show today talking a little bit about the NBA. The Mavs take a crucial Game 5, and I know we talked about this stat yesterday when we were talking about the Magic and the Cavs game. I was off by 10%, so I apologize for that. Instead of 70%, the winner of Game 5s, when the series are tied at 2, the winner of that game wins the series 80% of the time. 81.7 if you'd like to be exact. They win that series 80% of the time, so Game 5 in a tied series is crucial, and you look at it and it makes sense. You know, it's much easier to win 1 out of 2 than it is to win 2 out of 2, especially in a playoff series when it's tightly contested. So it makes sense, but 80% is still a higher number than I thought it would be. So let's break down that game. And in the first half, there were really 2 different games. It was when the Clippers could make shots and when the Clippers couldn't make shots. This game was over about halfway through the third quarter. The Clippers went on a run there where they didn't score a field goal for like 10 minutes in that game. In between the late end of the third, beginning of the fourth quarter, they went on a stretch of over 5 minutes where they did not score a single basket. Now, they had some points on free throws, but Luka and Kyrie were getting anything they wanted on the other end. Luka had a very efficient game from the field. He was incredible. Watching him play, he was making all those tough shots that you expect a prime Luka Doncic to make. Very, very, very good at tough shot making and clutch shot making. It got to a point where, with more than 5 minutes left in a crucial Game 5, like I said, the winner of this game wins 80% of series when it's in this situation. The Mavericks pulled their starters with 5 minutes left to go in this game, and that just goes more to show the utter domination that the Mavericks had, especially in the second half of that game. You know, what with their what with their huge lead, that field goal drought that the Clippers went through it's not something that's sustainable. And really, outside of the whole team, you can kind of take a look at the stars of the Clippers. They had really bad games. In this huge game 4 victory to even up the series, the two Clippers stars that are healthy, James Harden and Paul George, they combined for 66 points on relatively efficient shooting. You go to today's game, or last night's game, they combined for 22 points on 6 of 25 shooting from the field. It's not going to win you games. Really, what this series comes down to is if the stars can cancel it out, the bench players are going to have to go at it. And everything, and I do mean everything, was going the Mavericks' way. It wasn't very close. The Mavericks just kind of beat them. And it's tough to do when your stars aren't having a good night. James Harden, 2 for 12 from the field. That's a liability out there. 4 turnovers, it's only 7 points. Paul George hit a bunch of tough threes in the fourth quarter to kind of salvage his game a little bit. But, aside from those 2 tough threes that he hit, he was, 9 points. It wasn't a very good game from either of them. They both, he did have a triple-double. It was maybe the worst playoff triple-double that I've ever seen. Or no, it wasn't a triple-double, excuse me. I'm sorry. He had a double-double, but it wasn't a very good performance from the Clippers or really anyone really anyone on that team. Terrence Mann, who was providing a lot of spark as kind of that secondary scorer for the Clippers, he got hurt on a non-contact injury towards the end of the game there, and that definitely sucks for them. He's a high energy player. Terrence Mann is. He's someone that can come in. He's been starting, but he can come in off the bench and really just get the team going. He's been really, really good for them. So hopefully he's okay. But there are bigger things to worry about if you're the Clippers. The Clippers need, and I say need, they need them. They need their stars, James Harden, Paul George, to have good games. They can't put up stinkers like that, and especially both of them can't, because they need them to be able to duel with Luka and Kyrie. And if they're unable to duel with Kyrie and Luka, then you're going to see these 30-point blowout games that we've been seeing out of them. This is the way that the Mavericks play, and the Clippers kind of play a very similar style. Games where the Mavericks have won, outside from a tight game 2, where Luka just beat them straight up. That game 3, you had Kawhi and Paul George combined for 16 points. Kawhi Leonard is not going to play in the rest of this, but James Harden had a good game, but he can't do it alone. He's not that guy anymore. Russell Westbrook is a liability on the court at times, and he don't get me wrong, he has his values. Russell Westbrook does. Again, he's another one of those energy guys that can come in and he plays with effort. If there's one thing you can say about Russell Westbrook, it's that he plays with effort. He always plays with effort, and it's a very commendable thing. It's not easy to come into a game when you're down by 30 and give it your all. But Westbrook constantly is the hardest working player on the court with the most hustle. He just has lost a step when it comes to playmaking and drilling. Really just being that MVP player that he was back in his prime. He isn't that anymore, and he kind of needs to fall back to his role. He's starting to do that. He's not complaining that he's not starting anymore. That hasn't really been an issue since he came to the Clippers. He's a good guy to have lead your second. You need to, step into that role, maybe focus more on passing and scoring. And I know he's been doing that really well. But in this last game, he thought his team was struggling, and he was trying to be that guy when he wasn't really getting it done. Really an awful game for it. They just, you have a over 10-minute stretch, or 5 minutes, it's a good look, and you can't You can't have that if you're the Clippers. You know, it's just not sustainable to win games. And they know that. They'll come back, and hopefully, as long as their star players are going to be able to make shots, I think they'll be fine in Game 6. Game 7, maybe, I don't know. Like I said, they need to have their guys play 2 of their best games for the rest of the season. And that's not easy to do. You can't walk in and say, hey, I need you to be your best with some of these older that have struggled off the story at times. You know, Paul George hasn't always been the guy you want to give the ball to in the playoffs. He's had his play struggle. James Harden also has had his playoff struggles. Kawhi Leonard's hurt, and it sucks because he's been very good in playoffs, but you can't have him to rely on in these clutch moments right now. You need to rely on some of your other big-name stars that got you to this place. And they need to make these, they need to put the ball and be there to make those plays. And they weren't there last night, and if they want to advance, they need to put as much effort as possible into their next couple of games. There are also an elimination yesterday. The Heat got eliminated yesterday, and no one was really that surprised. Celtics were the favorite, odds-on favorite into the postseason for good reason. They dominated the Heat, aside from the one game when the Heat decided to make every single three-pointer that they attempted that night. And the Heat were just outmatched, especially without their best player. It didn't really make a difference. We talked about Kristaps Porzingis. His injury, he should be back at midway through that second round, is what I've heard. But the Magic, I'm not too concerned about really giving the Celtics that many fits. Just watching their games, maybe it's just between the two, but those teams don't really scream, oh, beat Celtics, you know? Anyway. Lots of Game 6's. We're going to break them down later on in our show. Between the Knicks and the 76ers tonight, and the Pacers and the Bucks also play Game 6 tonight. We're going to break down all those Game 6's in a future segment. So stick around. We'll be right back on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows where 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the news it fits some losing shit. A stupid myth, you choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh, I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just broke down Game 5s from last night. We are going to break down Game 6's in just a second. That is Game 6's for the for all the major Game 6s that are going to be taking place. We have 2 of the 3 Game 6s happening tonight, that being between the the Knicks and 76ers, and the Bucks and Pacers will be playing tonight. We could have that matchup set. And then the Cavs and Magic will be playing on Friday, as well as the Mavericks and the Clippers. So Friday will be the last. So tomorrow will be the last day for round 1, and then we will do a preview of round 2 tomorrow as well. But we'll break down all the Game 6s here real quick. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net, leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message will pop up at the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. We appreciate anything that you do give. We appreciate you taking the time to watch this show, and we appreciate all the support that you've given us in the past and in the future. Like I was saying, though, we are going to be breaking down NBA Game 6s in this segment here. Like I said, the last day for round 2 will be tomorrow, so we're gonna save the breakdown for the last day for round 1 will be tomorrow. We're gonna save the breakdown for round 2 until tomorrow, when we have the best idea possible of who we expect to be in the next round. That is assuming that Game 6s are the end of it. We'll go with it as it happens. But we're gonna break down all the Game 6s here for you, and we'll start with the ones tonight. The most intriguing matchup has been the 76ers taking on the Heat. Oh my God, not the Heat. I apologize. The Knicks. The 76ers taking on the Knicks. It's been a interesting series. Heading into it, at least on paper, I expected the 76ers to go out and dominate in the paint, on the glass. That has not come out. The Knicks started out hot. They won the first 2 games. Joel Embiid comes back in Game 3 with a 50-point masterclass to win their first game and keep the Sixers in the series. Then they drop Game 4 at home, and Tyrese Maxey comes in 2 nights ago, plays hero ball, sends the game to overtime, and leads with the 76ers, sending them to a Game 6. And this Game 6 is going to be a lot of fun. The Sixers are going to win. They need Joel Embiid or Tyrese Maxey to step up, and they both kind of got a little bit shaken up in Game 5. I know Tyrese Maxey took a real tough fall on his hip, it looked like. He finished the game. Joel Embiid came up limping a little bit towards the end, but they both finished the game. I expect them both to be fine, but just keep an eye out for that when you're watching the game tonight, because that might affect them a little bit, depending on how bad the injuries actually were. But they need at least one of them to have a good game if they want to stay alive and send the series back to New York for a Game 7. It was an interesting tactic that Sixers ownership did. This game is back in Philly, so Sixers owners went out and bought a whole bunch of tickets. And it's an interesting tactic. It's something that we see happen quite more often than you'd think. There's always a story around it. It happens at least once a season in every sport with these big games, and it feels kind of weird to me. I was reading a story about this, preparing for the show today. I was reading a story about how the Sixers ownership bought a whole bunch of Game 6 tickets so that the Knicks fans couldn't show up and they wouldn't buy it. And it's one of those things that I don't necessarily think is wrong, but at the same time, there is something deep inside of me that says that's a little iffy. It's a little icky. Something about that just doesn't sit right with me, and I was trying to figure out exactly what it was. Home court advantage is a thing, right? And I don't want to overstate the importance of it, but if you have to manufacture home court advantage, especially in a city like Philly, with a basketball team that is pretty good. The Philly fans are known for showing up and being rowdy and having a really good environment a really good playoff environment, especially. The fact that they feel the need to buy tickets so that Knicks fans don't get it is a little concerning to me. The Knicks fan base is a great fan base, but when you are going into Philly, it feels like Philly should be able to control that crowd enough. And if they are that concerned about the Knicks fans overtaking the 76ers arena, this is a bigger issue than just this game. And I'm sure they're not. I'm sure they're just trying to pack the stadium with their fans, but it feels like it's more of a symptom, more of like a desperation move than anything. And it just doesn't sit right. We see teams do this all the time. I remember the Rams did this when they were playing the 49ers. And that was a really desperate move. It didn't sit right with a lot of people. I understand trying to win the game, right? And I understand it's important to do that. But, at the end of the day, it's entertainment. And if you're stopping people from seeing it, I know that if I was a fan that went to try and go buy tickets to this game, if I was a Knicks fan, and I find out they're all sold out, and I'm like, ugh, that sucks. I understand, though. It's a playoff game in Philly. Later, I find out that the owner is the one that went and bought all these tickets just so I couldn't show up. It's one of those things that really kind of just gets under my skin a little bit. And yeah, go for it. Do your thing. Give yourself the advantage. I respect it completely. But putting yourself in the shoes of the consumer for a second there, as opposed to the owner, which I think we do that too often in sports media when we're talking contracts, when we're talking just about anything. We put ourselves in the position of the team and not the player or the fan or anything like that. And I think that's something that probably needs to change a little bit. But it's a little tangent. That's a whole nother thing. You have, all this raucous crowd, and if I was that person that didn't get a ticket because Daryl Morey was like, oh, you know what, I'm gonna go and buy some seats that I'm not gonna use. I assume that he's giving them to Philly fans, and if he isn't doing that, then that's insane. But the story came out, and I don't know, it was one of those things that just kind of popped out to me. Had a little moment in my brain. I do think that at home, it's going to be a tight game. I don't know if the Sixers will be able to win this series, but I think they'll be able to take Game 6 and extend this series to 7 at Madison Square Garden, where this series was always supposed to go. But yeah, this should be a really fun game tonight. The other game tonight is going to be between the Bucks and the Pacers. And the Pacers and the Bucks, Dame is still questionable. All of their stars are questionable. We saw them come out and have a really hot shooting night and kind of just dominate in Game 5 the other day. They need to come out with that same energy. For the Pacers to win this game and get out of this series, they need to have a fast start. I think this game is going to be decided in the first quarter. If any team jumps out to a big lead in the first quarter, that team is going to win because there's a lot of momentum being carried over from Game 5. If the Bucks jump ahead early in this game, I don't think the Pacers are going to be able to recover. If the Pacers are able to jump ahead, their confidence is going to be there, and I think they're just the better team without the Bucks stars. So this game, I believe, should be decided pretty early on. Could be very wrong. These are both teams with incredible offenses and lackluster defenses, so anyone can go on a run at any time. So it's never a good idea to count either of these teams out. But looking at it, I think whoever jumps out to that first big lead, especially if it's the Bucks, are going to win this game. I think the Pacers are going to win this game just because the Bucks can't do this 2 nights in a row without their stars. Now, Dame is questionable, Giannis is questionable, they're both game time decisions. If they play, it's a completely different story. I'm going off the assumption that they're not playing, and if they aren't playing, Game 6 in Indiana, I don't think the Bucks are going to be able to feed off the environment and really get to the Pacers the same way they were able to get to the Pacers in Game 5. And the final Game 6, we just broke down a little bit of it actually in that first segment. But excuse me, the Cavs Magic Game 6 that's happening on Friday. Back in Orlando, Orlando has been dominant at home. They've blown them out in both games at home. Cleveland offense has an issue with disappearing. Even in the first two games when they were winning pretty handily, Cleveland's offense was still disappearing. They've disappeared for stretches in every single game of this series, aside from maybe Game 2, but that's debatable. Their offense has just completely disappeared for moments. And back home, when the Magic have been able to take advantage of that, I expect the Magic to tie this series, make it go 7. So maybe we'll have to push back our coverage of round 2 until Monday. But there's a lot going on in the NBA, in the NHL. It's playoff season. That's to be expected. But the Magic and the Cavs, I think the Magic will take Game 6. I think the Bucks will win the series in 6. And as much as I want to take the Sixers at home, I just think the Knicks are going to be able to pull ahead and take this 1 in 6. So I expect both of these series to be decided tonight. Anything can happen. That Knicks game is still going to be really good. So I'm very excited to watch that one. Let me know what you guys think of any of these games, any of these matchups. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. But yeah. Coming up in our next segment, we are going to move on to the gridiron. We're going to talk a little bit about the Steelers. There's been a lot of news about the Steelers today. We're going to talk about some of the head-scratching ideas that have been thrown out there, some fifth-year option news, roster moves with the Steelers. The Steelers have been in the headlines all over today, so we're going to talk about that coming up next on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus, and we actually have some breaking news coming in just now. Breaking news from Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN. The Bucks have announced which of their stars are playing. I know we just finished covering that, but big news. Damian Lillard is playing tonight. Giannis Antetokounmpo is out for Game 6. So one half of that duo is in, the other half is out. Does that change the outcome of the game? Dame can certainly take over a game, and if, like we saw in the first half of Game 1 when he put up 35.5, that's still insane to me. He can take over a game. I think this definitely might sway in the Bucks' favor, especially with all the momentum that they have right now, and I'm sorry to keep pounding on that point or harping on that point, but it's something that I hadn't seen out of the Pacers in a really long time. The kind of dejection that I saw on the court is not a really good sign to me, and especially with Dame coming back, I think that the Bucks might extend this series to 7. Interesting. Maybe the Bucks can make a little comeback here. We'll have to see. But anyway, in this segment here, we are going to talk a little bit about football. The Steelers in specific. The Steelers have had some interesting discussions. We'll talk about the Steelers. We'll talk about some fifth-year options being declined, being accepted, all of that and more. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message will pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, everybody else around the world to see. We appreciate anything that you do give. We appreciate all of you for sticking around, tuning in, and watching. And we appreciate your support. Like I was saying, though, we're going to move on to the gridiron, talk a little bit about some football. The NFL draft is over, but the offseason is still heating up. You know, the main event might be over, but there's still all these after effects. There's people getting cut, people getting signed. Rosters are starting to slowly finalize. Rookie mini camps are coming up. I want to talk a little bit about some guys in there. But we're gonna start with the Steelers. And one of the most interesting headlines that I have seen in quite some time coming out of football. The Steelers special team coach, and this is coming from Jalen Warren, the running back, he said, the special team coach said, Bally Sports Channels pulled off lineup by Comcast after Comcast and Bally's bankrupt failed to make a new deal. So baseball is... okay, we'll talk about that tomorrow. I need to get more info on that. That's more breaking news, guys. This is we stay ahead of things here. But one of the more interesting stories that I have seen in quite some time with the new kickoff rules. The Steelers were talking about getting a little creative, and I'm not sure if he was joking or not. He could have totally been joking, but it's an interesting idea to play around with here. The new kickoff rules, for those who forgot or didn't hear, it's basically adopting the old XFL kickoff style. The two teams line up 5 yards apart from each other. No one is allowed to move until the ball is caught by the returner or hits the ground. There's different touchback rules, but for this story, it doesn't really matter that much. The idea with Justin Fields is we see what he's been able to do in the open field as a running quarterback. Why not put him out there on special teams in a much safer environment when you're not really getting these guys running super fast downhill at you? It's going to be very similar to just, a normal running play. You can make schemes out of this, and that's something I'm really looking forward to with this league coming up, with this at least next season. But if you're not going to use Justin Fields as a quarterback, which, side note, I think that would be kind of stupid to do. Sure, you have Russell Wilson, but you know what Russell Wilson is. You still might have a little bit of hope for Justin Fields. You didn't trade for him to be a backup for 1 year and then disappear. I know they didn't give up that much, but still. It makes more sense for him to start at quarterback, but all reports that I've seen seem to say Russell Wilson is the starter, and that's just how it's going to be. But if Justin Fields isn't going to be the starting quarterback, he is the kind of athlete that you want to use. I mean, you got him for a reason. You put him back there on the kick return, and it's still kind of wild to say, let's put a quarterback on kick return. But you take a look at what he's done with his legs with the Bears. He's one of the most electric runners in the game when he gets in open space. He's incredibly fast. He's quick with his decisions. Kick return's a whole nother animal. And the entire league is going to be trying to figure it out this season. We don't know how it's going to work. I don't think they would actually put Justin Fields a kick returner. But with the new rules, it's not necessarily that as outlandish of an idea as it would have been last season. Justin Fields, you don't want him getting crushed. He's your backup plan at minimum. We saw how many quarterbacks got hurt last season. The Steelers went through it themselves. They ended up starting Mason Rudolph in a playoff game. That wasn't their plan heading into the season. I know it wasn't. Nothing against Mason Rudolph. He played just fine, but a little bit against Mason Rudolph, actually. I take that back. He's not really a great quarterback. He's not the guy you want starting the playoff game for your team. And I know the Steelers weren't really ever going to make that much noise in the playoffs. They just weren't a team that was built for that, but still. Not really the guy that you want at quarterback. And if you're putting your backup plan in a kick returner with a chance to get crushed every single game, multiple times a game, you have to be careful with that if you're the Steelers. And like I said, I think it's definitely an interesting idea. Like, Justin Fields is a special talent with the ball in his hands. He's not built like a running back. He's not built to do, like Cordero Patterson kind of situation. And I definitely don't think that they're actually going to put Justin Fields back on kick returner. But it's a fun little thought to have. You can have 2 kick returners back there, have him out there as one of them, I don't know how well he can catch a kick. I'm sure if they worked on it with him, he'd be fine. The more I talk about it, the more excited I would be to see this, actually. And the more I think it might work, especially with the new kick rules, because you're not having these big guys flying at you as fast. So it's not going to be as dangerous. He could do it. I'm talking myself into this one, guys, and maybe I'm insane, but I'm talking myself into this one. I'd like to see it at least once. It's maybe like a special package. You get Justin Fields out there, give him a chance to do some damage. I don't know. Anyway, that's a whole nother thought. The rest, there was other quarterback news coming out of the league in the last couple days. With the Giants in particular. The Giants have a very interesting situation. They didn't take a quarterback in the draft, thank goodness. Wouldn't have made sense at 6 after those guys were off the board. But now you're left with a prove-it year of Daniel Jones. You have an out year after this season. He's coming off a torn ACL and Drew Lock. And there are reports that it's going to be a QB battle, like a straight-up quarterback battle at a camp. Daniel Jones' job is not safe. And I feel like that's completely reasonable. Drew Lock played a couple really big games for the Seahawks down the stretch. He beat the Eagles, had that nice drive at the end of the game to beat them in late December, around Christmas time. I think that was the Christmas game, actually. But the Giants are going to have a QB battle. And Daniel Jones is coming off a torn ACL. I'm not sure if he's going to be ready for the season. Reports seem to be that he will be, but he got hurt on like week 5, so it's going to be tight. Drew Lock has the opportunity to start some games, and it's interesting because Drew Lock, when Daniel Jones was drafted at 6 overall, and then Drew Lock got drafted in the second round of that draft, me as a Giants fan, me personally, I wanted them to draft either Josh Allen or Josh Allen of the Jaguars or Ed Oliver of the Bills. That's what I wanted them to do there. It's ancient history at this point, so it doesn't really matter. But when that pick happens, and then you go a little further into the draft, I think Daniel Jones and Drew Lock are very similar ball players. That was my analysis in the draft. That's still my analysis now. They both do some things really well, and they both do some things really poorly. And I was looking at it, I was saying you could have just waited and gotten Drew Lock in a second. And yeah, you could, but now you get Drew Lock now. And it's an interesting situation. These two, like I said, these two came in the same class. They went to different teams. One went in the first round, one went in the second round. They've both kind of flamed out. Daniel Jones did get that big contract after winning a playoff game, and Drew Lock got shipped out for Russell Wilson in what might have turned into one of the worst trades in NFL history for the Broncos. But Drew Lock has shown some potential. last season, especially when he was filling in for Geno Smith, he showed some really good potential with what he could have. He can lead a team. Again, granted, that Seahawks offense is really talented, and it's nothing like what he's walking into with the Giants. His accuracy still sometimes can be an issue. He hit a couple really nice deep hole shots last season, and that game-winning touchdown pass to Tyler Lockett, pretty ball, but he still has some concerns, at least in my book. It's going to be an interesting quarterback battle. I think they're really on the same tier, especially Daniel Jones coming off an injury. Daniel Jones is more with his legs. Drew Lock doesn't quite have that element, which I think is what actually sets them apart more for me than anything else. Drew Lock might be a little better at holding on to the football, which is probably Daniel Jones' biggest weakness. But adding Malik Neighbors, if you can get that short game going, which Brian Daboll did, that's how they built their playoff success, their playoff roster from 2 seasons ago. It was a lot of short, quick routes, decisiveness, getting your guys, scheming them open rather than, skilling them open, I guess, for lack of a better term. But the Giants are in an interesting spot. And I don't envy Brian Daboll for the spot he's in. This is essentially a contract year for Daniel Jones. Like I said, the Giants have an out after this season, so they're either going to roll with him or they're going to cut him and draft a quarterback next year. Either one's fine. This is his last chance. This is a prove-it year. His last contract year went really good, so maybe this one will too. I think Daniel Jones will still end up winning that job over Drew Lock, like I said, because he has been there for 6 years now, 5 years. It's been some time, and they're on the same level. Drew Lock isn't that much better than Daniel Jones, so I think this is one of those QB competitions that you're gonna kind of lose either way. As a Giants fan, but I think Daniel Jones will win this competition out, assuming he's healthy for the beginning of the season. Lots of stuff going on. 5th-year options. Najee Harris had his declined. He's been over 1,000 yards every season. It hasn't been a very efficient 1,000 yards, and his carries have started getting eaten into by Jaylen Warren. But so was Justin Fields. Both of them, Justin Fields and Najee Harris, had their 5th-year options turned down, so they'll be free agents next season. Kwity Paye of the Indianapolis Colts had his 5th-year option selected, so he'll have one more year on his contract with the Colts. It's the Steelers are in an interesting spot. So are the Giants. Both of those teams are in interesting spots with their quarterback situations. They kind of mirror each other a little bit, even. The Steelers are a better team, no doubt, but they kind of mirror each other in certain ways. Similar situation at quarterback. The defense, they are better than the offense, but the Steelers just are better in almost everything. But we'll see. I'd love to see Justin Fields return some kicks. That's my big thesis from this segment. I'd love to see Justin Fields return some kicks. I think that would be a lot of fun. It's not going to happen, but I do think it would be a lot of fun. Anyway, we're going to close out our show today talking about some MLB Power Rankings. I talked about it a couple days, I believe last week, but it got cut out. I don't know what happened there, but stick around. We have our 1-month MLB Power Rankings coming up next on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just talked about some quarterback controversies and battles, Justin Fields potentially returning kicks, Daniel Jones versus Drew Lock in New York, and some fifth-year option stuff coming out of Pittsburgh. In this segment, we're going to talk about the MLB Power Rankings. 1 month into the season, it's been a little wild. It certainly has. Very interested to hear what you guys think of my power rankings here. But we'll hop right into it. Before we do, though, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message will pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do want to control what we talk about here on the show, all you need to just leave a donation on the link on the screen. GSMCpodcast.net. We appreciate anything you do give. Appreciate you sticking around and watching. We appreciate any comments you leave. But like I was saying, we're going to finish off our show here with the MLB Power Rankings. MLB Power Rankings. We've done a couple of these already. We are 1 month into the season now, so we can start to form opinions. The baseball season is very long. We're only 30 games into a 162 game season for a lot of teams, somewhere around that 30 game mark. So we're not even like a quarter of the way through the season at this point. So it's not easy to really draw 100% conclusions, but we've seen a lot of really interesting stuff coming out of this season. In the AL West, the Astros are in 5th place, and the Athletics are in 3rd. Who would have thought that? I know 0 people that would have said 1 month into the season, the Astros are going to be last, and the Athletics are going to be 3rd. But, I bet you someone had that out there. That's insane. There's been some really surprisingly great teams, especially in the Central. The Brewers, the Guardians, the Royals have been really good. So why don't we just jump right into it? Yeah. Starting at number 30, the Chicago White Sox have been historically bad. They're on pace to break the record for most losses in a season in the modern era, set by the 69 Mets. They're in last place. The Marlins have been rocked by injuries at 29. They really have. They've been rocked by injuries, and it sucks because, the Marlins were a playoff team last season, and now they are one of the worst teams in all of baseball. The defense is one of the worst in baseball. The pitching staff, which they prided themselves on, has been hurt and is working on coming back. It's going to be a mess all season because the offense is not good enough to sustain a winning baseball team without that elite pitching staff that they had been able to build over the last couple seasons. I have the Rockies at 28. The Rockies are also really bad at baseball. These last 3 teams at the bottom are in a tier below everybody else. They are definitely the worst teams in the sport, and the Rockies, they're not doing anything to really separate themselves from these 2 groups. They're slightly above them because they're not hurt as much, they're not historically bad, but they're still really, really bad. At number 27, I have the Angels. The Mike Trout loss stings. It really does. The Mike Trout loss, that's not something that as a team they can really handle. He was the one thing that was keeping them out of irrelevancy. But Mike Trout is done for the season, and the Angels are going to continue to fall in power rankings until something gives. I have the Athletics at 26 and the Nationals at 25. I probably could switch those, but the Nationals are, before today's recording, or live show, I guess, they were at 500. They just finished up losing, so now they're back below 500. But the Athletics have been a surprise. They're also in that same kind of boat. I talked a little bit about them. They are not a team that you ever expected to be good, but now they're sitting here, above 2 teams in their division. it's really impressive. Honestly, it's cool to see. It speaks more on how bad the Angels and Astros have been to start the season than anything else. I don't think it really says that much about the Athletics, because the Athletics are still bad. You can't look at a 14-15 record or a 15-15 record or a 15-16 record and say, oh, these guys are good. No, they're not good. They're just better than some teams that we thought would be a lot better. And it's an interesting situation that they find themselves in. It's a good one. They're winning in their last season in Oakland, or winning more than they did last year. Winning more than they have in really quite some time, since they most recently blew it up back in 2021. So it's been 3 years since they were since they were even this good. That sucks for them. Like I said, I have the Nationals at 25, who, again, are another team that's been surprisingly decent. They're not good. Much like the Athletics, they're not good, but they've been surprisingly decent. And you can even add my 24th team, the Cardinals, on that list. All three of these teams have been surprisingly decent. They've been mid to good at times, bad at other times, but 26 to 24 are all kind of together, just like 30 to 27 is. Then you have the Astros, and if they were any team that wasn't the Astros that didn't have that level of talent, I have them at 23. They would probably be down there at 26 or at 25 with the Nationals and the Athletics, maybe even further back with the Angels and the Rockies, because they have been atrocious. They haven't played an easy schedule, but they have been really, really bad too. They have this high upside talent that is keeping me from dropping them lower than 23. Yordan Alvarez, Justin Verlander, Kyle Tucker, all these guys are really, really good on their team, and they're, MVP candidates. So at times they have been. So their high-end talent is keeping them from going lower. The Giants I have at 22, kind of tied with the Padres for teams that should be better but are slipping right now. The Giants have been hit with some injuries. They went out and they got some big additions in the offseason, and they haven't really been faring that well. Blake Snell went on the IL with injury already, and he was really struggling in his first couple starts back. Excuse me. At 20, I have the Pirates, who started off the season pretty solid, but are starting to come back down to earth. They're just not very good. We kind of knew what they were. They still have time to bounce back. Like I said, this is only 1 month in, so all these teams have the time to bounce back. And then we get into another cluster. This cluster goes from 19 to 15. All right, I have the Twins at 19, the Red Sox at 18, the Rays at 17, the Mets at 16, and the Tigers at 15. All of those teams are kind of in a cluster, a group to me, where they're better than bad, right? And they're better than okay, but they're not good, right? All of these teams have at times in this season shown potential to be ranked in the top 10. I've had the Rays and the Red Sox ranked in the top 10. I've had the Tigers ranked as high as 12, I think, in my first power rankings. But and then the Mets have had that hot streak in week 2. The Twins have just been kind of middling, but all of those teams have the potential. They're just not consistent enough to be ranked higher. So they're kind of in that meh good tier kind of situation from 19 to 15, that being the Twins at 19, Red Sox at 18, Rays at 17, Mets at 16, and Tigers at 15. At 14, you kind of get, again, the way I do my power rankings, I put them into clusters. You kind of get another cluster from 14 to 11, which is good, good. Better than this last cluster, but not by much. I have the Diamondbacks at 14, the Blue Jays at 13, the Rangers at 12, and the Reds at 11. These teams are propelled by high-end talent, I guess. They're kind of in that same tier as this last group we looked at, but they have the high-end talent to propel them ahead of it. So when push comes to shove, they have their stars that you can count on to get you that big hit, to get you that big out in the bullpen, and your starting pitching can step up when you need it to. All these teams have that weapon that they can turn to when they need. And now we're entering the top 10. The Mariners I have at 10. They've just been a lot better since we did our last power rankings. The Cubs I have at 9. Again, they've been consistent. I was low on the Cubs, I really was, but they've done their job well. They've brought in their bats have been there, which was what I was worried about. The pitching has been fine, but they've overall been really solid. I talked about the Royals and the Brewers a little bit in the intro. I have them at 8 and 7. They've been really good in the beginning parts of the season. I was really high on the Royals, and I wasn't as high on the Brewers, but the Brewers will do what the Brewers will do. Their offense is starting to play. They've been kind of messed up, screwed up by some bad ump luck recently. Not like bad calls against them necessarily, but just like unlucky situations that happen to go against them. The Aaron Judge blocking a double play with his hand. It's not against the rules, so they called it right, but it's one of those things that it's just unlucky timing. And there were a couple other things with the Brewers just a few days later. Like they had a pitcher tossed after hitting a guy in the leg, which it was a weak ejection. There's been lots of weak ejections in the MLB this season. Aaron Boone got ejected because a fan yelled, which I think that's hilarious, but it's dumb. The Phillies at 6, their pitching was on a tear recently. Their hitting is always good. You have Bryce Harper. You have all those studs in that roster. They're going to be really, really good. At 5, I have the Guardians, and their bullpen has been untouchable. Their bullpen has been. Stephen Kwan, their defense, has been amazing. He made a great play in extra innings to win the game last night. Diving play, double play on the tag for the runner. Very, very. This is the Guardians team that we saw a couple years ago that made that run to the playoffs, and they just disappeared last season, and now they're back. And this is what's frustrating about the Guardians, because they have the talent, they just don't use it half the time, and maybe halfway through the season they're just going to stop playing ball again. But for now, I have them at 5. And it's been the same top 4 all season. It's changed up the order a little bit. I have the Yankees at 4. After their hot start, they've started to fall a little bit, back down to earth. Their pitching staff isn't the same without Garrett Cole. But they're still very good. Juan Soto paired with Aaron Judge is enough to win most games, to win a lot of games. I have the Dodgers at 3. The Dodgers are, again, a little hit with injuries on the pitching staff, but their pitching is getting better. Yoshi Yamamoto is getting into his rhythm. The bottom part of that order is starting to heat up. It was really slow at the beginning, but they're starting to heat up, and the top of that order is just insane. The Orioles at 3, they sent Jackson Holliday back down, but they don't need Jackson Holliday. Jackson Holliday is a luxury for them at this point because of how loaded they are with young talent. He'll be back up. I'm not too worried about him. He struggled a little bit, but he'll be fine. When he comes back up, he'll be back to that highly touted prospect that he was when he made his debut. And at number 1, like I've had all season, it's been the Braves. The combination of pitching, the combination of hitting, high-end talent, everything is there. I know they lost Spencer Strider, which is a huge blow for them, and really any other team I don't think could take it. But the Braves, here's the thing, they have an incredibly deep rotation. They, at the beginning of the season, had Chris Sale at 4, who has had a renaissance of a year. He's back to the old Chris Sale, which of course he is. He goes to the Braves for a nothing deal because his contract is a little bit of an albatross at this point, and he's like, all right, guys, I'm here now. I'm ready to show up and win some games. And it's been great for the Braves to do this. So they've been number 1. They've been number 1 all season. Let me know what you think of my power rankings. I'll run through the top 10 for you real quick once more. Mariners 10, Cubs 9, Royals 8, Brewers 7, Phillies 6, Guardians 5, Yankees 4, Dodgers 3, Orioles 2, and Braves number 1. Like I said, let me know what you think of my power rankings. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I'd love to hear your thoughts about anything we talked about here on today's show. Appreciate all of you for sticking around with me. We'll be back here, same time, same place tomorrow, breaking down all of the Game 6's. We'll break down some of the second round matchups that we do know in the NBA in case they start over the weekend. But until then, I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll see you.